Every few months, it's an Awesomemay tradition to trash on Illumination. And today is no different because I am angry. In 2015, Illumination dropped their Despicable Me spin-off movie, Minions. Minions had become so popular with the Despicable Me brand, they were just like, let's just make them their own thing. And this ended up being a really smart move, obviously. A really terrible move, but smart. $1 billion! $1 billion! How to be a billionaire. Number 1, create a software or company or brand. Number 2, create the Minions. I ended up watching every Despicable Me movie during the winter, and I was kinda entertained. I hate to admit that, I was a little entertained, guy. Do I think some of these movies are good? No. Do I think they're entertaining? Yeah, a little. And to be honest, I think Illumination is trying a little harder to make their movies better. Sing 2 was the first Illumination movie in years to actually make me feel something. And the Grinch movie was kinda cute. I think a huge reason Illumination has such big box office hits is because of the sheer amount of promotion they do. Everywhere you go, you see the Minions. They have been promoting this film for 2 years. There is Minion ads, there is a Minion office crossover. You wake up in a hotel, chances are there will be Minions outside your window. Seeing everybody pull up to the theater in a suit and tie, I had to watch The Rise of Gru. Whether I was a fan or a hater, it was a priority. So today I'm going to be reviewing the new Minions movie and deciding, is Illumination getting better or do they still suck? Like, subscribe, let's do it. The Minions The Rise of Gru is not a good movie, and that's why it's such a good movie. The first Minions movie felt so pointless and annoying, and every character felt like it was created in 5 seconds. But The Rise of Gru works so well because it has Gru. I honestly think the Minions only work well when they're with Gru. I'm not a Minions hater, like I always thought they were cute, but I started to hate these suckers when they became their own thing. Without Gru, they are just the main characters, and that is a terrible world to live in. The Minions worked so well in Despicable Me because they were the likable sidekicks. They were these henchmen. It just felt like Illumination was having fun with these characters. But a full movie length of the Minions just being the Minions does not work. It's annoying. This movie has a pretty good balance of Gru and the Minions, so it makes it more tolerable. This movie knows what it is and doesn't try too hard to please the audience, which in some way kind of works. A lot of animated movies sometimes have a really bad or boring first 10 minutes that you have to get through, but Rise of Gru surprisingly thrives in the first 10 minutes. It's probably one of the only good parts. It's really nicely paced, we get some Despicable Me references. Oh my gosh, Despicable Me references! I had a fun time watching Gru's cynical shenanigans. I've noticed this first good 10 minutes trend in a lot of their movies. I despise the first Minions movie, but I actually enjoyed the intro to that movie. It's really the end/middle where they struggle and rush things. Now, there were a lot of problems with this movie that I was really disappointed in. Like, of course I expected that, it's Illumination, but honestly a part of me wanted this movie to be like an unexpected masterpiece like Paddington 2. And honestly, if it had a better plot, it could have been like that. This movie actually has a surprisingly amount of really nice scenery. They definitely chose a more colorful vibe with this movie, and I'm a sucker for colors. They don't really utilize the colorful backgrounds and atmosphere enough, but it's still kind of there. I actually really like the segments where the Minions were searching for Gru. It was wholesome, it was funny, and I thought that was a really good idea to play on. You know, until it takes like a huge detour and they start, you know, doing some moves. We get one of the hardest lines written ever in cinema history, and I got so many chills.
Me? I want to be a super villain.
But like every other Illumination movie, it falls flat on its face when it comes to plot and storyline. The storyline just has no purpose. It is so jumbled and random, it just feels like a bunch of short films put into one. There's a side plot where the Minions learn Kung Fu, but like, they barely even utilize it, so it's just so pointless. I honestly forgot the entire reason why the Minions were in a plane. Why were they on a plane? Why is there so much Minion cheeks? Get this off my screen. I think it should have focused more on the upbringing of Gru, like the title states, and less on these guys. I guess Illumination is just allergic to making a good villain because all these guys are so boring and stupid and boring and stupid. None of them have any personality but to be silly. And the silly aspect works to an extent. They're supposed to be caricatures, I get that, but a villain like Joker works so well because he has the perfect mix of silliness and scariness, which adds a lot more tension to the story. None of these guys add any tension to the story. Half the time they're actually on the screen, they literally just stand there. I miss when Illumination made perfect villains. Like, what happened to El Macho? I love my boy El Macho, he was so cool. lot of other Illumination movies, this movie kinda has a banging soundtrack. Like, such a good soundtrack to the point I don't think this movie deserves it. The amount of connections Illumination has, and yet they use these songs for such a bland movie. You got Phoebe Bridgers, you got Tame Impala, you got Funky Town! Pharrell Williams surprisingly only gets one spot on this list, which is just criminal. The music really puts you into the vibe of this film, and it was another saving aspect for this movie. I wish they utilized the 70s setting just a tiny bit more. Some more references would have been kinda cool. I guess we got a Jaws reference, but like, that's also Universal, so that doesn't even count. That's just an ad. I don't know, a Star Wars minion would have been sick. If they had a Queen song, I would have just combusted. But it's the Minions, so they don't really utilize the opportunities they have. These movies could be good if they just tried a tiny bit harder. If Gru's gonna be kidnapped for half of this movie, why is this called Rise of Gru? Where is the rise? As soon as they hit the third Despicable Me movie, Illumination realized that they didn't have to try hard with any of their movies. They could just live off the success of the characters they created 10 years ago. And boom, you got $200 million in one weekend. The plot isn't that terrible, but there's nothing really to be invested in. The plot basically follows Gru stealing a keychain from the bad guys, and like, that's a fine idea and all, but it happens so quickly that it just kind of forces you into caring for this adventure that has no other substance, but that it has funny Gru and Minion moments. And yes, that works for the target audience, which is children, but I don't know, it still could have a better story. I mean, if you're gonna spend all this time making good animation, might as well. This movie ripped off the cinematic classic Alvin and the Chipmunks, and I will not stand for it. First of all, there's this scene where Minion has a nightmare and asks to sleep near Gru, and Gru says yes. Sounds kind of familiar. There's also this scene where the Minions are outside in the pouring rain and they're begging Gru to come in, and he lets them in. Also sounds familiar, huh? And this is not the first time they ripped off Alvin and the Chipmunks. They did it with the first movie. Tell me these aren't the exact same scenes. This movie has one of the quickest endings in cinema history. Honestly, it's kind of impressive how quickly they rushed this ending. I felt a sinking regret for even seeing it once we got to the ending. Like, they set up this whole dang adventure, and the villains just get defeated in 5 seconds max. What the heck was I watching for then? It's like at the last half, the creators realized how boring the villain aspect was, and they just turned them all into marketable McDonald's toys. And yet, these new versions were a million times more interesting. Why didn't they just start off with these versions? We only get like 5 minutes of them. Yo, Minion Rabbit crossover? All the ending needed was just a little more meat to it. The movie actually ends with a callback to Dr. Nefario, which saved this movie for me. I've never felt so nostalgic and amazed ever in cinema. This was a perfect moment. The entire crowd was going wild. Dr. Nefario has the sickest cut. I actually kind of feel bad for how many negatives I had to say about this movie, because it's like beating a dead horse at this point. Everybody dislikes Illumination, nobody expects to like their movies, so why get mad when they're bad? But I'm also somebody who liked Sing 2, I thought the Grinch movie was cute. I do think there are some redeeming qualities to Illumination's movies. And I was kinda hoping this would be a change for them after seeing a little bit of good in Sing 2. And it wasn't entirely, but it still wasn't bad, so I'll take it. We're getting a lot of really bad animated movies this year, so in this pile of gunk, this is not a terrible movie. It's not a Norm of the North or an Emoji movie, and for that, I'm grateful. I asked some of my Discord friends what they thought about this movie, and the results were kinda weird.
It was great. You know, you gotta understand me. It was like, okay, looks, 10. Characters, 10. Like, story, 12. It was great. No, it had action, it had love.
Minions The Rise of Gru was honestly an experience. I would 100% recommend it if you are on every type of drug you can think of.
That movie, revolutionary, absolutely stunning, a work of cinematic masterpiece, a true joy to sit there.
The Minions made my pants wet.